the day I got out of prison. 2 men were waiting for me. One was my husband, and the other was my son. The sun was blazing, and both of their faces, one big and one small, were full of impatience. Erick asked me, after 5 years inside, "Have you learned your lesson? Do you know how to get along with people now?" The son I carried for 10 months chimed in, "Aunt Sophia and I don't like dogs, so you're not allowed to have one anymore," thinking of the ridiculous reason for my imprisonment and the dog I'd raised for years that Sophia had beaten to death. I chuckled softly. Sure. Then, I pulled out 2 documents. One was a divorce agreement, and the other was a document to sever parental ties. Chapter 1. The day I was released. Erick came to pick me up himself. At the time, my face was pale, and my arms, hidden under long sleeves, were still marked with scars left by others in prison. Yet Erick still had that same lofty, arrogant demeanor. He wore an expensive watch on his wrist and frowned as he looked at me. "Why did it take you so long? I've been waiting for you for half an hour." Half an hour, something that in the past, I wouldn't have even dared to imagine. I had never had such privilege, never had the luxury of him waiting for me. Back then, I was the one who would drop everything, waiting outside his office until dark, only to be greeted by Erick saying, "Don't you have anything better to do? Do you really need to follow me around every day?" But now, I simply gave a half-hearted smile. "Sorry to trouble you." Erick opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something more. I had already walked past him, not even glancing in his direction. As I reached the car, the window slowly rolled down, revealing Sophia's familiar face. She smiled and said, "Bianca, you're finally out. We've been waiting for you for so long. It's so hot outside." Erick was worried I'd get heat stroke, so he didn't let me get out of the car. "You're not mad, right?" Seeing I wasn't responding, Sophia frowned slightly. "Bianca, are you still upset about what happened before?" "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let them beat your dog to death, but it almost bit me before, and I just..." How ridiculous. A spoiled princess, who needs 6 bodyguards just to step outside, claiming she was nearly bitten by the gentle puppy I had kept locked in the backyard. But Erick always fell for her act. At her words, his frown deepened. "Bianca, are you still holding a grudge? If you really like dogs, I can buy you another one." At that moment, a small head peeked out from beside Sophia, full of anger. "It was just a dog. It almost bit Aunt Sophia. It deserved to die." My dear son, the one I carried for 10 months, clung to Sophia's arm, speaking out against me on her behalf, as if he were her biological child, and I was the criminal who had stolen him away. A sinner, damned to the deepest levels of hell. Looking into his eyes, which resembled mine in some ways, I suddenly wondered, maybe it's because he resembles Erick too much. Even Erick's indifference and his favoritism toward Sophia were completely passed down. Sophia gently scolded, "Lucas, she's your mother. You shouldn't talk to her like that." The child scoffed disdainfully and turned his head away. I guessed he was probably thinking that someone like me, especially someone who's been to prison, didn't deserve to be called his mother. When Erick motioned for me to get into the car, I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. Even a dog knows to wag its tail when it sees its owner. But look at our son, Erick. It seems he's already forgotten who his real mother is. Chapter 2. I chased after Erick for more than 10 years. I chased him until everyone in the city knew I loved Erick, and that I only had eyes for him. I even defied my parents for him, clinging to him like a resentful ghost, never letting go. When his family fell into a financial crisis, Erick finally lowered his head and agreed to marry me. The condition was that my family would have to bail out his parents and help them through the crisis. I forced my parents to agree, even though I knew Erick's heart belonged to his dream girl, Sophia. And Sophia was the illegitimate daughter born to the woman who had come between my own parents' marriage. I thought that even the hardest stone could eventually be warmed by the heat of affection, that it could soften over time. But Erick turned out to be cold and unfeeling, like ice. No matter how long I tried to warm him, all I got in return was humiliation and disgrace. Later, Erick single-handedly brought his family business to its peak, earning him the respect and submission of others, who all called him boss. And then, He turned around and destroyed my family, leaving us in ruins. My brother was forced to flee abroad, and my parents ended up in prison. He left me by his side, making sure to put on a benevolent face and say, if it weren't for the fact that you were pregnant with my child, Bianca, you wouldn't have fared well either. He brought Sophia into his life, surrounding her with luxury, nurturing her until she shed the demeanor of an illegitimate child and became polished and radiant. But Sophia hated me too. When I was about to give birth, she had my beloved dog beaten to death and even made a pot of dog meat soup for me. Smiling, she said, Bianca, since you love dogs so much, you should try tasting one. Furious, I slapped her on the spot and threw the scalding soup all over her. But the strain caused complications in my pregnancy, and I was rushed to the hospital that night, barely surviving to give birth to my child. Erick was merciless toward me. Because of Sophia's injuries, he personally sent me to prison. He even added a few fabricated charges, ensuring I stayed behind bars for 5 full years. The child I had risked my life to bring into the world, I never even got to see him. Erick said, Bianca, you should be grateful Lucas doesn't look like you. When I was released, I realized everything had changed. Yet nothing had changed. Sophia still hated me just the same. And so did my dear son, the one I had fought so hard to bring into the world. It was as if they had formed some kind of anti-Bianca alliance, always casting disdainful glances in my direction. Erick, however, seemed oblivious, or perhaps he noticed but simply didn't care. Just like back then, when I told him everything Sophia had done, all he did was frown slightly and scold me coldly. No matter what Sophia did, you shouldn't have thrown hot soup on her. It was just a dog. After all, you scarred Sophia. Bianca, you must pay for the mistakes you've made. Chapter 3. I didn't go home with Erick. Instead, I asked to return to my family's old house, even though he said, the house has already been sold to someone else. You can't go inside. I insisted anyway. Just seeing it from the outside is fine. Erick paused for a moment and, with some reluctance, agreed. To him, my family's house was a reminder of his humiliation, the place that forced him to give up the woman he loved. Of course, he had no desire to see anything from my family again. Sophia didn't want to go either. As the illegitimate daughter, she had been brought to my home by her mistress mother when she was just a child. Yet she wasn't even allowed to step through the front door. In the silent car, the only one indifferent to it all was Lucas. He was urging Erick to drive faster. Sophia said she'd help me build my blocks today. Dad, hurry up. Let's get home. They seemed more like a family than I ever did. In their harmonious picture, I was the discordant noise, an unnecessary brushstroke of color. But I didn't care. When the car arrived at the gate of my old house, I pushed the door open and got out. The familiar yet foreign surroundings made me feel disoriented for a moment. It was as if I waited just 2 more minutes. The door would open, and Bruno's impatient voice would come through the intercom. Why are you just standing at the door, Bianca? Get inside and eat your supper. But as I came back to reality, the empty, dark house stood before me, with no lights shining from within. From the private car behind me, Erick urged me to get back in so we could go home. I paused for a few seconds and said, I'm not going back. That's not my home. As I expected, Sophia's eyes filled with tears, looking pitiful. Bianca, is it because of me that you're saying this? I'm sorry. I never meant to take your place. Erick just took pity on me. That's why I've been staying at his house. If you don't like it, I can move out right now. This shallow attempt to play the victim, if it were posted online, people would be quick to comment, Sister, stop it. The green tea vibes are overflowing. But Erick seemed oblivious to it. And Lucas, having inherited all of Erick's flaws, shouted at me as well. Will you ever stop? You've been picking on Aunt Sophia since the moment you got out of prison. Isn't it enough? It's your fault Aunt Sophia suffered, so you deserve to go to jail. How can you still have the nerve to criticize her? He's only 5, too young to truly understand. He spent so much time with Sophia, and with Erick as a poor role model, learning all the wrong lessons. I could understand why he acted this way toward me, so I generously forgave him. Then I said, not only can I criticize her, but I can also criticize you. And I can hit you too, Lucas. Do you think I won't? Chapter 4. In the end, I got what I wanted. I was left alone. Lucas threw a tantrum, his cries sharp and piercing, hurting everyone's ears. Even Erick thought I had lost my mind. How could you say something like that to Lucas? Bianca, you really need to calm down. He left me standing there, driving away with Sophia and Lucas. I stood in place for a few minutes. Then, I clumsily climbed over the gate and slipped in through the first floor window, which had never been locked. Using my phone's light to guide me, I made my way through the house. It was a mess, as I expected. It was obvious how hastily things were packed up when they took everything. I headed upstairs and found my old room. Most of the gifts my parents and my brother Bruno had bought for me had been confiscated. I fell behind the headboard and, just as I suspected, found a thick stack of items hidden there. When I pulled them out, I realized they were the love letters I had written to Erick back when I was a student. I paused in silence and opened one. Tucked inside were bills of cash. These had been left for me by my brother Bruno. Our family's bank accounts were completely frozen, so Bruno couldn't leave me enough money to survive. He had no choice but to convert it all into cash and hide it around the house in places where the workers couldn't find it. But I didn't expect him to hide the money inside the love letters. Reluctantly, I had to reread each one of those letters from beginning to end. The naive feelings of a young girl, now like a boomerang, stabbing me in the heart over and over again. Even though I had given up on Erick, I still silently shed tears. In the end, I ripped everything into pieces with my own hands, as if I was wiping away all the feelings I had once had for Erick, leaving nothing behind. I wasn't foolish enough to spend the night in an abandoned house. With the money Bruno left for me, I found a small hotel in the city and stayed there for the night. So when Erick called to ask why I wasn't at the house, I was momentarily stunned. You climbed in to look for me? Of course. I didn't know if he had seen the shredded love letters, but an unwelcome hope surged in my chest. Before I could say anything, Erick continued. You're coming home with me today to apologize to Lucas and Sophia. What you said yesterday was ridiculous. Bianca, you can't talk to Lucas like that. He's your child. The words rose to my throat but were forcibly swallowed back down. I curved my lips in a silent smile. Don't you think Lucas looks more like Sophia's child than mine? Erick froze. What do you mean? Let's get a divorce. Erick. I exhaled slowly, releasing the pressure in my chest, and said each word deliberately. When you have the lawyer draw up the divorce papers, have him prepare a document to sever ties as well. I don't want you or Lucas anymore. Chapter 5. I thought I had made myself perfectly clear, but all Erick said was, Bianca, stop saying things just to spite me. It's pointless. Back when I was chasing him, I'd thrown my share of tantrums. I even gave him the silent treatment for days because of Sophia, but he didn't care at all. It was as if without me, he could live even more comfortably. In the end, I had no choice but to swallow my pride and endure my disgust for Sophia. At that moment, I suddenly understood. Whether I was angry or not no longer mattered to Erick. Everything I did meant nothing to him. Just like now, I suddenly lost the desire to continue speaking with Erick. I only said that once the lawyer prepared the divorce papers, I would sign them. Then I hung up, completely indifferent to Erick's interrupted words. The sound in my ears faded, leaving me momentarily dazed. It was as if, in an instant, I had forgotten why I was even alive. Knock knock. 2 gentle taps on the door. It was the owner of the inn, asking if I wanted to extend my stay. I nodded. While going downstairs to handle the extension, I heard the noise outside and couldn't resist looking back. It was children, led by their parents, skipping along happily. The inn owner said, There's a kindergarten nearby, so there are always a lot of kids around, and it can be a bit noisy in the morning. If it bothers you, I can give you a discount. I smiled and said that would be great. If it were back in the days when I was still a spoiled young lady, I wouldn't have cared about saving a few bucks. But now, everything seemed like a fleeting illusion. The innkeeper was kind, offering me a discount and pointing out the best food stalls on the nearby breakfast street. With so many students and parents, the street was lively and bustling. Back then, my parents thought street food was unhealthy. Only my brother Bruno would sneak me out to eat it. But after I married Erick and Bruno moved abroad, no one took me there anymore. Following the innkeeper's recommendation, I bought a Chinese crepe. Perhaps it was the way I was holding a crepe, gazing so intently at the children passing by. The stall owner smiled and asked, "Up early to drop off your child at school?" Huh? Instinctively, my free hand moved to touch my lower abdomen, gently stroking it. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to carry Lucas 5 years ago. So, I softly smiled at the stall owner. "No marriage, no kids. I'm just passing by." Before the stall owner could respond, an angry voice suddenly came from beside me. "Bianca!" I turned my head. I saw Erick in his suit, holding Lucas's hand, his backpack on his shoulders. The child was looking up at me. His eyes were red, filled with disbelief. Chapter 6. I felt a sense of twisted satisfaction from seeing Lucas's heartbreak. Didn't he hate me? Didn't he despise me? Wasn't Sophia the only one in his eyes, wishing she could be his real mother? Then why, at the moment I said those words, did he show such a pained, sorrowful expression? But I didn't acknowledge Erick's questioning or the hurt in Lucas's eyes. I coldly nodded at Erick. "Fancy seeing you here, taking Lucas to school?" His eyes widened for once, as if he couldn't comprehend how I could act so indifferent. "Why would you say something like that? Do you want to deny Lucas's existence? You're his biological mother." To be honest, I don't quite understand it myself. Back then, when I was pregnant, it was Erick who repeatedly made it clear he didn't want the baby inside me. If it hadn't been for his family's insistence, Erick would have dragged me to the hospital the moment we confirmed the pregnancy and forced me to terminate it. How is it that now I'm suddenly the villain who doesn't want Lucas? And the expression on Lucas's face made me laugh even more. If he doesn't see me as his mother, then why does he care about what I say? Why does he care if I acknowledge him as my son? Maybe my smile wounded Lucas's pride. He suddenly yanked his hand out of Erick's grip and shouted, You're not my mom. You don't deserve to be." Lucas turned and ran into the school, sprinting the whole way. On the way, he knocked over a little girl, but he didn't stop to apologize and instead shouted, "Watch where you're going." He has been raised to be an arrogant and spoiled child, completely different from the child I once imagined when I was pregnant. He shouldn't be my child, because he's becoming more and more like Sophia, just like when she was young, standing outside my door with her mother, pointing at me, screaming that I had stolen her father. I turned to leave, but Erick grabbed my wrist. He looked at me with the eyes of a stranger. "You shouldn't do this, Bianca. Lucas will be hurt. He's been waiting for you to come out. He said many times that he wants to see you." I shook off his hand. "Then you should have told him from the start that he's Sophia's child. That way, he wouldn't have had any expectations of me." Then, I stopped Erick from trying to explain. "This morning I told you to contact a lawyer to discuss the divorce and the termination of our relationship. How's the progress on that?" Chapter 7. For once, Erick was firm. He refused to agree to the divorce. He came up with many excuses. His family, Lucas, and even the company's business were dragged in as his shield. "There's too much going on at the company. I don't have time to deal with this." I nodded with full understanding. "That's fine. I can find someone as long as you're willing to pay. After all, you know my family went bankrupt. I don't have any extra money to hire a lawyer. I don't need any property or Lucas. Just the divorce papers. It's that simple." Erick slowly fell silent, his brow deeply furrowed. "Is this really necessary, Bianca? I've already moved on from the past and I'm ready to make things work between us." Moved on? That's easy for him to say. He may have moved on, but I haven't. 5 years in prison, scars all over my arms. Those things make it impossible for me to ever look at Erick's face calmly again. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stop myself from slapping him hard. I smiled slightly, turning to leave with the now cold breakfast in hand. After just a few steps, I remembered something and turned to ask Erick, "Why did you send Lucas to study here? Was it your arrangement?" He seemed to think that I had changed my mind about giving up on Lucas, and a glimmer of hope lit up in his eyes. "No, it was Sophia's idea. She said Lucas needs to toughen up, that he shouldn't always be treated like some privileged young master." His voice trailed off as he saw the mocking look in my eyes. Bianca, are you going to? No. I'm not trying to criticize Sophia. How she arranges things for Lucas is entirely up to your family. I said. I just want to ask you this. If Lucas were really Sophia's biological child, would she send him to this ordinary school, instead of one of those fancy bilingual preschools downtown that cost hundreds of thousands in tuition? The answer was obvious. She wouldn't. Because I know Sophia. And Erick knows her too. She hates me. Hates everything connected to me. And she especially hates me for taking Erick away from her. How could Sophia ever genuinely care for Lucas, the living symbol of betrayal? Her pretense of caring for Lucas is nothing more than a way to disgust me, but she probably never expected that I would give up on Lucas so easily. I'm so useless. I won't fight her for the child, or for the man. I'll just quietly choose to walk away from it all. The crepe I bought had gone cold, and when I took a bite, it didn't taste good at all. Suddenly, I missed the street snacks Bruno used to sneak out of school to buy for me. But unfortunately, I might never taste them again. Chapter 8. 5 years of torment didn't just break me, it broke Erick too. It seemed like he was losing his mind. He actually forced me to see a psychiatrist. No one dislikes their own child. Bianca, you must be sick. I didn't want to go, but Erick threatened me with my parents. I've found a way to overturn your parents' case. Bianca, as long as you agree to get treatment, I'll help them get out of prison. The one who sent them to prison in the first place was Erick himself. I looked at him and asked again, really? He nodded. How ridiculous. I'm begging the person who destroyed everything. But for my parents. I agreed. The psychiatrist Erick found was quite famous in the southern part of the city, with appointments fully booked until next year. It was only because Erick pulled some strings that I managed to get an earlier appointment. While I was speaking with the psychiatrist, Erick sat out in the hallway. He insisted that the door be left wide open, demanding that we be in his line of sight. The doctor chuckled and asked, "Why?" "I need to protect the patient's privacy." But Erick replied, "She's my wife. I need to ensure her safety." If this had happened 5 years ago, hearing him acknowledge our relationship like that would have made me jump with excitement. What a shame that now I couldn't care less. So, I gave a dismissive smile and added, "It's fine. I'll soon be his ex-wife anyway." When Erick sharply turned his head to look at me, I innocently met his gaze. "What's the matter? I only promised you I'd see the doctor. Not that I wouldn't divorce you." His face darkened immediately. His lips pressed into a cold, hard line. He sat rigidly on the hallway bench, staring at me without blinking. The doctor shrugged and said, "I think I understand why you want a divorce." I smiled without saying anything. I suppose there really were many things I needed to vent to the psychiatrist. He even made a suggestion. "If you truly can't accept your own child, I suggest you volunteer at an orphanage or similar institution. Maybe after spending time with other sweet children, you'll be able to accept your own." Chapter 9. The doctor's suggestion received Erick's approval. On the way to pick up Lucas, he even called his assistant to inquire about all the orphanages in the city. I sat in the back seat, turning my head to watch the changing scenery outside the window. I didn't wait with him at the school gate. Instead, I had him drop me off far away. Erick opened his mouth but ultimately only said, "I'll arrange for Lucas to transfer schools. You were right, he deserves to go to a better one." I didn't respond, nor did I pause my steps as I walked away. I didn't go to the orphanage Erick had arranged for me either. Instead, I followed the suggestion of the innkeeper and went to find a woman named Aunt Eva. In her small, cramped home, she had built a tiny orphanage, sheltering more than a dozen homeless children. The oldest was in high school, and the youngest attended a nearby kindergarten. As it turned out, the youngest was the little girl Lucas had bumped into when he was angry. Her face was round, her eyes big and bright. She was especially cute. Eva said, "As the children grow up, they all need to go to school." So I tightened my belt and saved up enough to send them to school. I patted the little girl's head and smiled as I asked Eva if I could stay and help take care of the children. Of course. She agreed, but she smiled awkwardly and said, "I don't really have any money to pay you. All the money goes to feeding them and paying for their education." I shook my head and told her I didn't need payment. The more time I spent with them, the more I grew to love these children. Golden riches might raise spoiled brats, just like Lucas, but plain porridge and pickles can nurture obedient and well-mannered children like Selena. When it was time for the kindergarten parents' meeting, Eva was busy taking care of the kids and couldn't go. So she asked me to attend the meeting in Selena's class. I agreed to take on the task. As it happened, Selena and Lucas were classmates, and their seats were very close to each other. So when Lucas saw me walking into the classroom holding Selena's hand, his eyes widened, and he shot up from his seat. Chapter 10. He had indeed been raised to be unruly and out of control. He ran over and pushed Selena. Selena fell to the ground, landing hard on her backside, and immediately started crying. Lucas, with his hands on his hips, shouted at her, "Thief!" Selena, wiping her tears, stood up. "I'm not." Because of the commotion, the other parents all turned to look. Even the other children gathered around to watch. But Lucas only called Selena a thief, refusing to say what she had stolen. With arrogance, he declared, "You're a thief, a dirty little thief." The parents didn't know anything, but seeing Lucas, at such a young age, wearing brand-name clothes and shoes, and the man attending the meeting with him looking like a successful professional, they silently sided with Lucas, scolding Selena and even criticizing me, accusing me of not raising the child properly. I remained silent. After helping Selena up, dusting off her clothes, I sternly questioned Lucas. "You say she's a thief. What exactly did she steal from you?" Lucas's eyes turned red as I scolded him, and tears started to roll down his cheeks, but he stubbornly bit his lip. "She knows exactly what she stole from me." Maybe I was too harsh. The other parents stepped forward, telling me to speak more gently to the child. Seeing Lucas in tears, some of them even spoke more harshly. "You didn't raise your own child properly, so how can you take it out on someone else's kid? I bet your kid will turn out just like you, no good." They continued to criticize, completely ignoring Selena, who was crying and denying, "No, I didn't steal anything." Just as the commotion reached its peak, the teacher and Erick finished their conversation and entered the classroom. The teacher asked, "What's going on here?" The parents quickly started complaining, their faces showing anger, while constantly glancing at me. Even Erick noticed me, his expression changing slightly. Lucas probably thought his dad, who always doted on him, would side with him this time too, so a smug look appeared on his face. "You're a thief. Now apologize." "Lucas, apologize." Chapter 11. Lucas froze. He looked around, once again confirming that neither Erick nor I was on his side. His voice grew shrill with anger. "I won't apologize. She is a thief. What did she steal from you?" Under Erick's stern questioning, Lucas couldn't hold back anymore. He burst out crying, shouting, "Selena stole my mom. She's supposed to be my mom. Why is she helping Selena?" As his words fell, the room fell into a stunned silence. The parents exchanged awkward glances, and for a long time, no one said a word. It was probably at this moment that they noticed the resemblance between Lucas and me. One by one, they awkwardly closed their mouths and slunk back to their seats. The child's crying didn't stir any emotion in me. I didn't even glance in his direction. Selena wiped her tears and asked me if I wanted to go comfort Lucas. She added, "It's okay, Bianca. I can attend the parents' meeting by myself." I patted her head and smiled. "No need. I'll stay with you." Erick then brought Lucas over to apologize. His eyes were still red, and he looked unwilling, but with Erick pressuring him, the child could only bite his lip, lower his head, and say sorry to Selena. Selena generously forgave him, but then she couldn't resist taking a jab at Lucas. "You're always so mean. I thought you didn't have a mom. Turns out Bianca is your mom. But how come you're nothing like her?" Lucas was so upset that he was on the verge of tears again. Children abandoned by their parents are always sensitive and mature beyond their years, and Selena happened to hold grudges. Seeing Lucas's pitiful expression only made me want to laugh. Even Erick fell silent for a moment before saying to me, "I'm sorry." I looked up again and saw the heavy, troubled look in Erick's eyes. "I didn't raise Lucas well. I'm sorry for how he's turned out. You don't need to apologize to me. He's your son. As the parents' meeting was about to end, I packed Selena's bag. As we walked out of the classroom, Lucas suddenly ran over, grabbing my sleeve and softly calling, "Mom." I paused for a moment. "You've mistaken me for someone else. I'm not your mom." I gently brushed his hand away, not noticing the dimming in his eyes, and left the kindergarten with Selena. I had been waiting for Lucas to call me mom for 5 years, but when it finally happened, I didn't feel the joy I had once imagined. I had once hoped for this moment, before he spoke up for Sophia and looked at me with disdain. But on the day I was released from prison, when I saw him defending Sophia and talking back to me for her sake, the child I had carried for 10 months had already died for me. Chapter 12. Afterward, it seemed like Lucas had latched onto me and Selena. Every time I went to pick Selena up from school, Lucas would always be sticking close to her. When he saw me, his eyes would light up, but then he would turn his head as if nothing had happened, only to keep glancing at me secretly. I acted as though I didn't notice his gaze, completely ignoring Lucas's hopeful looks. Selena didn't like me picking her up anymore either, constantly complaining about how annoying Lucas was. But soon enough, she started relaying Lucas's words to me. He said he's transferring to a new school and won't be able to see me anymore. He asked me to give you something. It's the card we made for Mother's Day in class. Lucas said he spent a long time preparing it and wanted to give it to you. He also said that Aunt Sophia moved out of the house and asked me if you're coming back. Selena blinked, looking at me innocently. "Bianca, are you leaving?" I smiled and shook my head. "No, I'm not leaving. I had no interest in returning to that house. Everything that happened in the past, although no longer mentioned, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Even today, no matter how hot it gets, 37 degrees outside, I haven't worn short sleeves again, partly out of fear, and partly because I don't want to. The scars are too many and too deep. I don't want to scare anyone by showing them." The divorce agreement I had with my lawyer draft was progressing steadily, but Erick never cooperated, always saying he needed more time to review the terms, asking me to wait for his response. The lawyer asked me what to do. After thinking about it, I took the printed draft and went to see him in person. As luck would have it, Sophia was there too. She stood with an air of the lady of the house, smiling at me with narrowed eyes. "What's the matter, Bianca? Why have you suddenly come back? Do you need something?" A long time ago, Sophia and I had a similar confrontation, back when I first found out Erick liked her, and she turned out to be my father's illegitimate daughter. Blinded by jealousy, I wanted her to leave Erick. I never expected that one moment she'd be mocking and taunting me, calling me delusional, and the next, she'd be spilling coffee all over herself, her eyes welling up with tears. I was stunned. I turned to see Erick storming in, face full of anger. "Bianca, don't take your spoiled brat attitude out on Sophia." I hadn't even had time to do anything, yet I was instantly blamed for targeting Sophia, and she got what she wanted, wrapping herself smugly in Erick's jacket, giving me a triumphant smile. When it comes to Sophia, I've always lost, because Erick always favored her. She never had to do anything, and Erick would stand by her side. All these years later, and I once again found myself facing off with Sophia. The maid brought tea, and I glanced down at it, smiling slightly. "I just wanted to see if you still have the nerve to wear short sleeves." Chapter 13. Just as I expected, Sophia lost her mind on the spot. She threw the scalding hot tea at me, her voice shrill and piercing. "You think you'll be better off? What? Did the people I sent not manage to ruin your hand?" I had already suspected as much. The women in prison who had clear intentions, coming straight for me with sharpened toothbrush handles to slash my arms, those were probably all arranged by Sophia. She didn't dare ruin my face directly, worried that Erick would notice something when I was released. So, she chose to get back at me in a roundabout way. She must have given specific orders to make sure I suffered 100 times more than she ever did. That's why my body is covered in scars. And those 5 years in prison were so dark that I don't even want to remember them. The hot tea seared my arm and the side of my face, turning my skin a bright, painful red, but I didn't react the way I had 5 years ago, recklessly lunging at Sophia to make her pay. I simply curled my lips into a slight smile and looked at her calmly. Sophia. Sometimes people turn into exactly what they hate the most. She froze. The next moment, the door burst open. Erick rushed in, his eyes widening slightly when he saw my condition. Sophia. Why did you? Sophia scrambled to explain herself. But Erick didn't listen to a word she said. He just ordered the maid to call a doctor immediately and started applying ice to my reddened, swollen skin, as Sophia cried, trying to explain that it wasn't intentional, that I had only been trying to gain sympathy. Erick looked up. Are you saying that Bianca poured boiling water on herself just to put on a show for me? Sophia immediately nodded, but Erick let out a cold laugh. No, Bianca doesn't need to. Do you know she asked me for a divorce? She has no reason to play the victim to keep me. Sophia's face turned pale. So, you think I'm bullying her on purpose? Isn't that exactly what's happening? The same impatient look that Erick had often directed at me over the past decade appeared again, but this time, it wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at the Sophia he had always cherished. Sophia's lips trembled, and for a long moment, she couldn't find the words to respond. All I could feel was amusement. She's no different from who I was back then, equally foolish, equally manipulated by a man's emotions. In the end, left with nothing but the lingering disappointment of a relationship that was never quite real. The antique clock in the living room chimed softly, marking the passage of time. It was time for Lucas to come home. Chapter 14. No one must have told him that he'd find me at home, so Lucas's eyes lit up, and he excitedly called out, "Mom." As usual, I gave him no response, pulling my hand away from Erick. I said, I'm only here today to give you the draft of the divorce agreement. Since you've never found the time to look at it, if you have any concerns, please contact my lawyer online. I won't be coming back. After all, I only have one life. If I come back a few more times, I'm afraid someone might go mad. My pointed words made Sophia's hands tremble with rage. What do you mean by that? I smiled lightly. Nothing at all. Don't misunderstand, it's not about you. Oh, and one more thing. I turned to look at Lucas. I've spent a lot of time with the kids at the orphanage, and I've found them to be very sweet. But I'm sorry, I still can't stand Lucas. So my terms remain unchanged. I want nothing from you. Not Lucas. Not anything from your family. I just want a divorce. The color instantly drained from Lucas's face. To him, having his own mother reject him must have been a blow too hard to bear. Erick, too, seemed stunned by my words. He tried to reach out to stop me, but I evaded him. After a long pause, he finally spoke in a broken voice. Bianca, this isn't fair to the child. He said Lucas was only 5 years old, too young to understand anything. His perception of me came entirely from what Sophia and Erick had told him. At that time, they hated me. How could they have said anything kind? But nothing in this world is fair. If you expect me to treat Lucas fairly, then who will give me fairness for the 5 years I spent in prison? I looked at Erick. For once, his eyes were focused only on me, and unlike before, they weren't always filled with the image of Sophia. His eyes dimmed, and his voice was hoarse. Bianca, do you really have to be this heartless? I lowered my head and laughed softly. I'm just learning from how you rejected me back then. So to you, this counts as heartless? As I turned to leave, Lucas suddenly snapped out of it. He clung to my legs, crying sharply, his face turning red from the strain. Mom, I know I was wrong. I'll listen to you from now on, I promise. It was Aunt Sophia who told me to say those things. I'm sorry. Mom, please don't be angry. Mom, please don't leave me. The sharp sound of his crying made me furrow my brow slightly. I coldly pried his arms off me and walked briskly toward the door. As I closed the door, I saw Lucas trying to follow me, but he was crying so hard that he lost his balance and fell to the floor. He cried out, calling for me, over and over again. Even Erick, who tried to help him up, was pushed away. Get away! I want Mom to help me. Give me back my mom. The door shut, and the cries were muffled. I let out a slow breath. 5 years ago, when Erick sent me to prison, he was probably certain. He thought that because I loved him, and because my child was his, I would come crawling back after my release. no matter how much I hated him. But Erick was wrong. In the end, I didn't love him or the child that much.